during the civil rights movement, and was one of those courageous young people who decided he would do what he could to change what was going on in America. And so he was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and then, you know, after the civil rights movement, went on to become a member of the Georgia state legislature, and you know, most recently was president of the NAACP, or chairman of the NAACP, I believe that's right, located here in Baltimore. And so, yeah, truly a father of the modern civil rights movement, even though he started while he was quite a young man.
Yeah, but that helped to propel you to get interested in doing something, because I think the one lesson of the civil rights movement that pertains to every American is that people can change something that's wrong.
Oh yeah,
it is a positive founding message to us.
Yes, and you know,
to us all.
We see that today, you know, throughout the world, and we've certainly seen it here in this country, and it really underscores the importance of taking action when you see a wrong.
And that's what HUD is there for in fair housing.
That's right.
Could you please tell us what is the law? You've mentioned the basics of the law, but what is the law against housing discrimination in this country?
Sure. Well, you know, many people know that, you know, we've got a 14th Amendment, right, which says we have equal protection under the laws. But, I mean, the reality in, well, up until the 60s really was that when it came to housing, private owners and really public owners to some extent did whatever they chose. They might tell an African-American family, I'm sorry, I'd rather not rent to you, or you know, would not sell a home to a Hispanic family. There was just...
Or to a family with children.
Yeah, or to a family with children. You really did not have any recourse to sue. Certainly not, you know, there were people who tried to use some existing laws to address housing, but there was no, you know, direct law that applied to housing up until that time.
Yeah, let me interject. One of the misnomers of the civil rights movement among a lot of folks now that we're 40, 50 years away from some of these laws, is that it pertains to African Americans, when in actuality, the prejudice and the discrimination was against families with children, was against people with disabilities. Nobody wanted to have a cripple living in their house or in their apartment building. Those folks were discriminated against too.
No, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And you know, as we find with many civil rights laws, you know, there may be an immediate circumstance that leads to their passage, but the fundamental principle of the laws were that there are certain characteristics which have no place in a housing transaction. And so the historical prime mover in the case of the Fair Housing Act were African Americans and Hispanics who were trapped in certain communities, but this was not a law, you know, for African Americans or Hispanics per se. You know, with respect to race, the law said race plays no place in housing transactions in the United States. And whites, you know, sued under the law as well for individual circumstances where race may have kept them out of a property. But then beyond race, it was saying that certain characteristics like sex, national origin, religion, and then later, you know, we amended the laws to say the fact you have children or the fact you have a disability, none of these things have a role in whether or not you are a good credit risk and whether you pay your rent or, you know, can buy a home. And so, as with many of our civil rights laws, you may have one group that is advocating, but, you know, we're advocating really for much more fundamental principles that we all recognize as Americans, but need to codify in a law.
Yeah, well said, well said. And it's not in America that you can discriminate on these bases, and Americans have shown to our credit that we're in total support of that.
That's right.
We're in total support of that.
And I think it's been underscored at the state and local levels as well. So we have a very strong federal law, But some state and local laws have gone beyond the federal law also to say that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation
Such
is
as that in
unlawful.
Maryland, for
That's
example.
right, right. And then there are many states also who have stated that source of income should not be a basis for denying someone. If someone has a source of income that can pay the rent or allow them to buy a home, the fact that it's not, say, a job at the plant or a white-collar job should not be the issue. The issue should be, can they fulfill their obligations?
Or money from AFDC or Social Security or from whatever it is.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Or if you have a voucher, a voucher that's intended to assist you in paying for your housing, that if you have the wherewithal, you should be permitted to live where you want.
Hopefully next year Maryland will pass that. We'll add that to our bases of forbidden discriminations.
That's great.
I know, how can someone get in touch with HUD to learn more about the law and to file a housing discrimination complaint?
Sure. We're reachable by our 800 number, so from anywhere in the country or even in the Virgin Islands. We cover the other territories. Fortunately, I don't get to travel to Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico.
I was going to ask you if that was part of the perks of being a general deputy assistant secretary.
Well, we have offices there, and so far they've been holding down the issues pretty well themselves.
Unfortunately, unfortunately.
But I have been all over this land, and April's Fair Housing Month coming up, and so I'll have the opportunity to travel many places to talk to communities. But you can reach us anywhere in the United States through our 800 number. That number is 1-800-669-9777. And we're also on the web at hud.gov/fairhousing altogether, hud.gov/fairhousing. So you can file online or you can call us, and that 800 number will connect you to any one of our regional offices.
Great, thank you, thank you. Yeah, the website's a good one. It's got links to everything, all over the place.
Thank you.
All over the place. All over the
Yes.
place. Let's talk about April as National Fair Housing Month. First of all, why April?
Well, because the Fair Housing Act was passed in April. It was passed April 11th, 1968. And, as I said, that it was a direct response to the urban unrest. Dr. Martin Luther King was killed on April 4th, 1968. And, while there had been riots in other parts of the country, or various parts of the country before that, we saw many other cities go up in flame then. And, the Senate had recognized for some time that a fair housing law was needed. And in fact, Dr. King had been championing passage of fair housing law. And finally, that broke the gridlock. And within 7 days of his assassination, President Johnson was signing into law the federal fair housing law.
So to a certain extent, that first 1968 federal fair housing law is a memorial to Dr. King.
Absolutely. It really is the phoenix rising from the ashes in terms of social policy. And, President Johnson gets a lot of credit because he recognized right then and there that this needed to be done.
And he bent the right knees and bent the right elbows to get it done.
He was very effective, yes.
Yeah. It takes folks working together. It takes folks working together.
That's
and I
true.
know that's part of what this show is. Because
Yes.
HUD funds this show, for example, indirectly through Baltimore County and Baltimore City.
Yes.
But it's folks working together on these problems and these issues.
Yeah, that's true. And there are people at so many different levels who can make a difference. And so HUD does facilitate that kind of cooperation, state and local level, and among private individuals and housing industry as well.
Let's talk about what is housing discrimination today? What's the face of housing discrimination? There is some feeling out there that, oh, well, the law has been in place now for 40 years, 42 years, whatever it is now. Is it still needed? Unfortunately, I know,
Right.
having working on this